Hello, if you are just joining, we're going to give it a couple of seconds here to let everybody get into the call. Looks like we're still populating a little bit, but I'm going to get us started. So hello everyone again, welcome back or welcome to the Biennial ISLEnet Independent Living Institute. My name is Jenny Sitchell. I am the Operations Director with the National Council on Independent Living, and I also coordinate the logistics for these events. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a white female with brown hair, brown curly hair that's in a top knot bun right now. I have on a green cut off kind of top with some lovely round blue light glasses on. And I want to welcome everybody. Today's presentation is brought to you by the ISLEnet Training and Technical Assistance Project for Sills and Silks. The ISLEnet is operated by ILRU in collaboration with Nickel, April, and the University of Montana, with support provided by the Administration for Community Living at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So as we kind of do each time for each new session, captions are available in Zoom. You can click show subtitle in your Zoom menu bar to turn them on. They're also running at AI Media. The URL is a little too long to read, but I will put it into the chat as soon as I finish with the opening statements here. AI Media will allow you to enlarge the font, change the color and contrast of the captioning. ASL interpreters are also here today and will be for all of the Institute sessions. We are presenting in gallery view, so the interpreter should always be visible. You will need to be in side-by-side mode though, as soon as we start PowerPoint sharing today. When we start PowerPoint sharing, if you're not in the side-by-side mode, you can go to the menu bar that says you are viewing, it'll say Jenny Sitchell's screen, click view options and select side-by-side view. This will allow you to see the PowerPoint and interpreters at the same time and also adjust the size of each. If you are using dual screens, you may want to click optimize for dual screens as well. We don't recommend joining sessions by mobile or tablet if you want to see the interpreters and the PowerPoint at the same time. But if you do, you can swipe left on most mobile and tablets to change your view. You don't need to be on Zoom video to access the Institute sessions. We will read all slide content and all questions out loud so that the content will be available. And public chat is going to be turned off, but you will still be able to send chat messages to the hosts and panelists. We ask that you reserve the chat for requests for technical support unless otherwise prompted by the presenters. There are a number of easy and accessible ways to submit content questions to the presenters, though, outside of the chat. If you're on Zoom, you can simply type your question into the Zoom Q&A tab. You're also welcome to email me, Jenny, Jenny, @ncil.org, and you can email me with your questions. Finally, if you're on the telephone today, you may press *9 to indicate that you have a question. We will be sending out an evaluation link for this in the chat box, and you'll see it come up on the screen a couple times. The evaluation link will also open as soon as the webinar closes. We would be extremely grateful if you could just take a few moments to complete the evaluation. It really helps us with creating the best webinars and the best experience for everybody. So fill out those evaluations if you haven't already. Okay, so we're going to get started in the second part of our presentation today on developing leaders through diverse and inclusive consumer-directed youth leadership opportunities. Now, this afternoon is going to be more of a panel, but before we do that, as promised in our first session, we are going to answer a couple of the questions. Kimberly and Aaron are going to answer a couple of the questions that you all asked that we didn't have a chance to answer. So Kimberly and Aaron, I'm going to have you guys take it over.
Great, thank you so much. And for folks that were not on earlier, I am Kimberly Tissot. I am the president and CEO of Able South Carolina, which is a center for independent living that serves half the state in South Carolina. And I'm also, my visual description is I am a white female in my 40s with short blonde hair, wearing tortoise shell glasses and a floral shirt. And again, my pronouns are she and her. And if I was presenting to you in person, I am an individual who has a hemipivectomy, which is a high level amputation. And my style of mobility is to walk on crutches. Aaron?
Hi, I'm Aaron Baier, and I'm the Director of Administration for the Independent Living Center of the Hudson Valley. And my physical description is I am a young white male with short red hair, freckles, brown eyes, and I'm wearing a white shirt with either blue or black buttons. I'm not sure because I'm colorblind. So
one of the first questions, and please feel free, if you have other questions from the previous session, feel free to put your question in the Q&A box. We did capture some of the questions. And so Terry asked, how do I get in touch with the Youth Leadership Network? And Aaron, do you want to answer that?
So the National Youth Leadership Network, like I think I had mentioned, does not really exist in its anymore. It has disbanded. However, what I would recommend for people to do, because there's Nickel, there's April, as major nationwide organizations. But I would reach out to your local independent living centers to find out about what kind of youth initiatives are happening. And what you might find is that there isn't really a youth movement happening in your local area. So if there's not, then I encourage people to get things started. And if you need support for that, obviously, Kimberly, myself, Nickel, April, ILRU, we're all happy to be resources for such a thing.
Great. And the next question is from an anonymous attendee, just said, traditionally youth who are deaf and hard of hearing are not included in the disability youth programs. What suggestions do you have to make the YLF programs more inclusive to this group? And I can answer that. So that has been something that we have continued to work on improving, but we also work very closely with our Association for the Deaf in South Carolina. And then also there is a department within vocational rehabilitation that focuses on deaf services. And within our mental health services, there's also a group that focuses on deaf services. So we've done a lot of outreach within that community. And so really going to the community that have not been included. And so really looking at your unserved areas within your youth population as well, and reaching out to the community. Youth and of course with deaf culture, disability is not always they do not see deafness as a disability, as we all know. And so that's something that we do have to provide some education, because that is how their rights are protected, but also understanding that we are going to understand and accept their cultural response to becoming part of the disability community as well. So lots of education, but outreach. Aaron, did you have anything to add there?
No, not particularly, but I would say, find, deaf organizations in your local area, get to know people within those movements and build those relationships. Deaf culture is challenging beyond just the the communication barriers. But it's a matter of trust, and it goes both ways. So the more we can reach out to that community, get to know the people in that community, they can help spread the word and help us with that outreach. And like I said, it goes both ways. So.
And then Shannon Rivas, I probably said that name wrong. I'm so sorry. My last name's Tissot, and so I definitely understand. Does the instruction course on self-advocacy include decision-making and understanding what self-determination means? Yeah, absolutely. So advocating for yourself is always the first step with even becoming an advocate. So we definitely include that. And then also decision-making and how it's okay if you need supports with decision-making. Not everyone, nobody is fully independent. We consult with consultants to help us make decisions, and that's absolutely normal. For some reason, when the disability community can't make their decisions independently, then there's overreaction. People jump to guardianship and other ways to overreact to situations. And so as centers, we do need to make sure that decision-making is included, but also helping people understand that nobody makes 100% of all of their decisions without support from others. So good question, very much needed within all pre-employment transition services, but also youth programming. The other question that we have is pre-employment transition. It's vital, especially for psychological, social aspects. Discussions about suicide prevention is meaningful. When a young person is repeatedly told within a short time frame of a day by different people, she cannot do a job, cannot learn, unable to do a skill, they will have suicidal thoughts. And just to avoid talking about it is unacceptable. And that's where a lot of people, a lot of non-disabled people, they're not understanding where the cause of kind of living in an ableist world, how it can get to people with disabilities and how it can make us depressed and also have those suicidal ideation. So definitely making sure that you are covering that within working with youth. But oftentimes too, that topic will come up and that will be a discussion. But it does definitely take a toll on you, but that's where centers we can definitely help with that because we've oftentimes have experienced that as well. There was an anonymous attendee said, from a person without a disability, can I offer help to people with disabilities without hindering them or enabling hopeless? Absolutely. Allies are so critical to our movement as well. And I told you all that, not 100% of my staff are people with disabilities. We do have some because we also don't. It comes naturally, but they're allies. The non-disabled staff that we have are allies, and that's significant. But you don't represent the disability community, and that's where you definitely have to understand your place in all of this. And by empowering people with disabilities to use to advocate for themselves, to make decisions, to lead their own lives. That's something that you can empower and instill, but you don't represent the disability community. And I think sometimes people think that just because they learn disability or they have a family member with a disability that they know everything about disability, and that's not correct. The person that you're working with knows what's best for them. And let me see if I've got another question. Just comments, people are having similar struggles with VR, stating that consumers are too disabled. So the eligibility requirement, not understanding their mandate to also serve people with significant disabilities. Their definition is a little bit different from ours, but so a lot of people, I think, across the country are being denied services for that reason. And I think that's where SILs have to speak up and advocate for consumers as well.
And if I could add to that, I think, unfortunately, a lot of times voc rehab agencies, the counselors within those organizations are overworked. Their caseloads are huge. and they literally do not have the time to do what they should be doing. And I think, again, that's where, Centers for Independent Living can come in and be those peer mentors and, advocate for, appealing decisions, for denying services. And so I feel like where independent living and VR can really collaborate is pretty clear and pretty obvious. But I do feel as though the barrier we all are trying to overcome in many states, even here in New York, is how does IL and VR work together better? And it's difficult, but it's going to take the advocacy of not only the centers, but of those consumers of the centers, those people with disabilities, for themselves, agencies, and say what's wrong.
Aaron, you're a lot nicer than I am. I say that, yeah. VRs definitely need us. We've got to make sure that people with disabilities are included, and we have to hold their feet to the fire. If they're going to, provide that type of service and they're not doing it appropriately and not consulting the disability community, then I do think it's our roles. Remember that advocacy core service is pretty critical across the board with individual systems advocacy. So we're going to go, that was all the questions. There are some questions that we're going to ask the panel. So we'll allow the panel to answer some of the questions that were youth focused, like the social media. I have no idea what's cool anymore. But let's, Jenny, can we go to the slide so that we can introduce the panel? And Jack, Wednesday, and Alexis, if you want to just go ahead and turn your cameras on, this would be a great time. But today we're going to this is the second session of the youth presentation that both Aaron and I did earlier today, but now it's your time to hear from the youth with disabilities and to understand the perception that youth have growing up now and what keeps them IL, what attracts them to IL programs, what needs to change, and some of the old school vocabulary words and words terminology that we're using to describe our services, how some of that can be also outdated. But I first want you to hear from them and learn from them. So I am going to, if we can go to the next slide, I'm going to pass it to Wednesday to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Wednesday. I am a Black person with Afro-textured hair. I guess I'll give it for the picture. Actually, I should give it for myself. I have a hair pulled back into a puff at the back of my head. I am wearing cat eye glasses that are rimmed in purple and gold. I have dark brown skin, and I'm wearing a black and white striped shirt with a rubber pendant around my neck that I use as a STEM tool because I am autistic. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and she, her, hers. My hobbies include swimming, and I like learning different things about medical science. Kind of what brought me into IL was when I was younger, my disability was hidden from me. So I didn't really know, always know why I was struggling with things, or that I had rights that could get me the things that I needed for school. I remember even going to a meeting one time, and I think it was about accommodations, and I didn't know what accommodations were. I just knew that my teachers and my parents were talking, and I now recognize that that's something that's really important for youth to learn, and so I'm passionate about youth getting to learn things like that, how to self-direct an IEP. when I got to college, I was having some difficulties, so I needed to go get assessed and get like my disability services. I had to work that out for the first time, and the support person that worked with me on campus showed me an advertising, I guess, for the Youth Leadership Forum. And that's kind of how I got into IL. And I really have a focus on, well, I guess I've had a lot of leadership experience. So I've just mentioned the Youth Leadership Forum, and that's where I learned a lot about independent living for the first time and about disability, the disability community as well. I did Hire Me SC, which was a campaign that was done in South Carolina about hiring people with disabilities. I was a diversity peer educator at my school, so I taught, I facilitated discussions at my college with different students on different topics. My go-tos were I did presentations on and talks on disability, as well as LGBTQ+ issues. I also helped with talking about Black culture and Black students on campus. I wasn't equipped. Well, I was an equip leader. I still do stuff with equip, and that is that is through Able South Carolina. So I was employed part-time to do youth programming, and it's very, peer-to-peer. And that can be through doing hangouts. So when you get together and we have something that you've chosen topic, the youth, the equip leaders come up with like the plan for the session, and it's very youth directed, youth led, and youth attend. And I think that was really good. And that was one of the things that kind of drew me into the IL world. And then another leadership experience was I was a part of the Obama Foundation Community Leadership Corps. So I worked on a project with 2 other students from my school. We wanted to bring social change to our campus. So having professors and staff take diversity training and have professors have to do training on the ADA and why they have to give their students accommodations, because that was a problem on campus and we thought we needed to address it. And then just addressing the needs of different students on campus. Oh wait, I noticed that there's some questions coming up. So some things that are important to me in disability in IL is disability justice. I like to use that framework to make sure that we're including everyone, and centering on those who are most affected, and making sure that leadership comes from the people who are affected, so nothing about us without us, and even people who making sure to focus on people who may be forgotten, like for example people with intellectual disabilities who might be in a long-term care facility. A lot of people think deinstitutionalization happened and that was it, but there's still a lot of disabled people in institutions, and so there's still work to do there, and people and we should center people who don't have access to their rights as much as some of us may have. And so I'm really passionate about serving disabled people who are in other marginalized populations. So disabled people from race minorities, disabled people who are LGBTQ+, disabled people who are poor, disabled people who, just like have multiple marginalizations, or a combination of things I listed. And so I'm also really passionate about making sure that youth with intellectual and developmental disabilities like myself are included. It's important to be really cross disability, and I think sometimes people want to separate themselves out from people with intellectual and developmental disabilities in the disability community. And I think that we're better if we work together. Yeah, so I think that I bring that perspective to wherever I go.
Awesome, great, thank you, Wednesday. And do you want to also let folks know where you're employed?
Oh yes, I work at Able South Carolina, and I'm an employment and financial literacy specialist.
Great. And Wednesday started off as, you know, just like what she said, is she was in the Youth Leadership Forum, was part of our Equip leadership, and we adored her so much that we offered her a full-time position, and she is now, you know, definitely a leader in IL. We will go.
Oh, I guess I should follow my, oh, sorry. I guess I should finish my slide. I realize I didn't read the last point up there, but what I want to see in the disability community is to really embrace the framework of disability justice and use it for our advocacy so that we can make sure that everyone is included and that we are, that what we're doing isn't harmful to any specific group in the disability community. I just want us to move forward collectively.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Alexis Rivers, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name. Wait, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Hello, my name is Alexis Rivers. I am 21 years old. My pronouns are she and they. I have a puffy, uneven fro with butterfly earrings and a striped shirt. My hobbies include reading manga, watching anime. New one is roller skating. Leadership development. I've been a part of YLF 3 times. The 3rd time I got a chance to interview Judy Human, which was amazing. I've been in Equip on and off for around 5 years. And what I really want to see in the future is change some of the language and bring awareness to intersectionality. I would like to further spread the independent living philosophy with others by developing more inclusive and accessible events. And one of those events, I am actually working on making events for people with autism at my church. And it's a group called To Be Young, Autistic, and Black. And I have no idea what else I'm supposed to say.
You're good. We have a million questions for you later. All right, next slide. And Jack, are you ready?
Hi, my name is Jack and my age is 21. My pronouns are he and him. My hobbies are video games. My leadership development skills are YLF, Project Search, Equip, and the Charleston County Sheriff's Office. And I want to bring the independent living society to places that it has not traditionally been. For example, in my job at the Charleston County Sheriff's Office. And so like what that means is like right now, I'm the only person with a disability working there, and I would like to see more people with disabilities working there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm gonna pass it, and we can go off of the slides, and because we are going to just go ahead and start asking questions. And we have a set of questions that we're going to ask, and then we're going to open it up to you all to see if you have any questions for the youth panel. Aaron, do you want to kick us off?
Yep. All right, everybody. So the first question, probably the most difficult one of this entire presentation, is leaders need a boost. We get drained after a while. So for all 3 of you, coffee, tea, or something else to give you a boost.
Well, this is Wednesday. I really do like coffee, but I take ADHD medicine every day. So that's, you gotta be decaf or half calf or something like that. So I guess what gives me that is my prescription ADHD medicine.
Hi, this is Alexis. Mine is none of those. I prefer just taking a break and just blowing bubbles. That's what gets me through the day.
Love it.
And for me, I know this is gonna sound kind of funny, but it happens at night and at daytime. So at daytime, I'll have maybe a Coke or a Pepsi, but at night, I'll have a couple of beers.
Sounds good, Jack. All right, I'll start with the next question. And that doesn't sound bad, Jack. I think we all have a beer or something else to help us at the end of
Yeah.
the day. So no worries. So for all of you, what attracted you to the independent living movement? Whether it was through the YLF program, the other youth programs, but what kind of kept you going within our movement?
This is
Mine was the supported decision making between me and my mom. She told me a little bit about it. I didn't understand, and she like, well, give it a try. And so I went to a clip summer series in 2015 or 16, and I was introduced to a lot of different things I didn't know. I didn't know about, well, I did know about I had a 504. I just didn't know there were meetings. I didn't know. And then after leaving that, I took more charge of my independence and being more independent and learning more about my disability and learning about disability rights, history, continue along with YLF, and then further on more stuff.
What keeps you keep coming back?
I would say community. I want to make more friends. I want to learn more about other people.
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, so what attracted you to the IL movement, and what keeps you going within the IL movement?
So necessity attracted me to the IL movement. There were things that I wanted to do. I guess the primary one that when I first got involved was to graduate college. I was having a hard time in college, living on my own, and also keeping up with classes. I had professors who did not want to give me accommodations, and I had one professor who not so indirectly told me that, maybe I shouldn't be in college, I shouldn't be taking this. And I thought, that's not right. And so that really pushed me into the IL philosophy and wanting equal access to things. And so for a while, it was like, this is what I have to do to get what I want. I have to advocate, or I'm not going to get the degrees that I set out to get. And so I did that. And then I'd been involved in activism previously. I did some stuff with racial justice in 2015, and then throughout the community leading up, and throughout the community throughout with different groups. So I already had a taste for how to advocate and how to do activism. And so once I started learning more about the IL movement and critiquing it when I learned about disability justice, and I'm really critical when I form my opinions on things. And in the community that I found was supportive. I found that I was much better able to advocate, and I was able to help other people advocate, and that felt really good to empower other people. I see how much work there is to be done, and well, I feel like I got to see it through. So those are some of the things that attracted me to, keeps me going in IL.
Jack, what about you? What attracted you to the independent living movement? So organizations like the youth programs that you're engaged in, and what keeps you coming back?
So Actually, it was my first time at YLF that made me want to start doing this. And funny thing is, I saw most of my school friends the first time I went,
Mhm.
and some new people I've never even met. I'm one of those people that like to meet new people.
I mean, you're really good at meeting new people as well.
Awesome. So the next one, I already can tell that Wednesday's may have already even answered this, but we'll give her another chance and definitely want to hear Alexis and Jack's thoughts. What do you think is needed in independent living? Are there things we need to change, or are there things we need to do differently?
Okay, so I guess I will start this one out. I really think that a lot of the focus in IL is really towards, at least in my experience, getting disabled people to work. And I feel like that really, well, I see how like practically for independence, it's really important to have your own money. Like that's the end of it. And SSI is a poverty trap. You're only gonna make so much on it. And so I fully understand why that is there. But I feel like that is kind of centering how productive disabled people are, as kind of like worth, proving disabled people's worth by saying that we can work. And that maybe not everyone can, or can for like, 40 hours a week or something like that. So I feel like we need to take a step back and focus on well, so one of the two principles of disability justice is leadership of the most impact. And another one of the principles is commitment to disability solidarity and collective liberation. And I really feel like we need to focus on disabled people who are often forgot about when we're doing our activism. Like people think like, oh, the institutionalization happened so many years ago, but that's not true. There are a lot of people with psychiatric disabilities and intellectual disabilities and developmental disabilities who are in institutions, and we still need to work towards making sure that all disabled people can live in the community. I also want to mention that there are disabled people living in institutions like prisons, because that happens a lot of the time because people didn't have the resources or care that they need, and they're not getting it in prison. So we need to keep in mind the justice system and our work. And so like, I feel like those are some basic things, like we need people to have rights and freedom. So where do we notice that most? Like prisons and institutions. And so I feel like a good bit of focus may be going to that. And I think also kind of changing what maybe independence means to some people. Some people have a like the do it on your own kind of thing. And I'm not saying that that's how we do it, but I think sometimes in IL gets the idea of like you got to be able to support yourself financially. You got to be able to do this, and I think it's good to do things for yourself, but it's also good to be interdependent and meet each other's needs and work towards solutions together. And maybe what one person's good at is one thing, but another person's good at another, and they can help each other. So those are all things that I kind of want to see change in IL.
Awesome.
Alexis and Jack, do you have any ideas? What are your ideas?
I do. So my two things, my first thing actually goes towards what Wednesday was saying about the prisons. So at my job at the Charleston County Sheriff's Office, the sheriff that just got elected, somebody was having a seizure in a prison when the other sheriff was still sheriff, and there was no law saying, oh, he was able to get help. He just died in the prison before it was during her swearing in.
So focusing on some of the present issues within people with disabilities is definitely needed. I love that suggestion because I think our folks get trapped in the prison system a lot of times.
And even though if you have a disability, I think just let them out, give them help, take them to the emergency room.
Yeah, they've got it, especially if they're in a medical crisis. Absolutely. So education and working with them. Yeah.
And I feel like for me, one thing that's helped me is just working on things that I'm not good at, like taking my own showers, stuff like that.
That's a great, I mean, that's, and learning like different ways to take a shower and make sure that you're taken care of. Absolutely.
I
Good.
recently got to use the shower chairs, and
Yeah.
that's a whole new world.
Yeah.
But Jack, you mentioned something that brought a thought up to mind about the prison system is definitely some places. I think, and I noticed this in the disability community too. Sometimes I can't even say we, sometimes members of the disability community want to separate themselves out from people who have psychiatric disabilities that are more stigmatized. Like they'll be like, oh, like, you know, the person who's in like the jail for crazy people or something like that. And they don't want to be considered in the same category as that, but that's people who have psychiatric disabilities are often put in places like prisons and or often spent time in institutions. I spent time in institutions and should be included in that disability movement, and we really gotta be kind to each other. And I think that would go far to helping with the prisons and at least on our end of disability, and I can't say with the law, would help if we could recognize, hey, those are my people.
Absolutely. And so I hear not to be, so there is disability hierarchy within our movement as well. And so making sure that going back to that cross disability piece, as well as making sure that everybody is our community who has a disability. And it's important to make sure that all of them have their rights and all of them are being served. Yeah, great suggestions. Alexis, did you have anything to add to that?
Well, I like what you said about independence versus interdependence, and how it's not always about being independent, being by yourself, living on your own, getting a job, working a 9 to 5. Sometimes it's working in your house and just cleaning it up and just maybe have someone help you or something, and also understanding that mental health matters and stuff like that. And there's a lot of stigma in the disability community when it comes to mental health, like schizophrenia and stuff like that, with the whole thing with the mass murders and all this stuff. And they always say it's a mental health thing, and that people jump towards mostly schizophrenia or bipolar or something.
Absolutely. And it's not the disability at all. People with disabilities are actually more likely to be victims of mass shootings. Yeah. So a lot of education there.
And I don't know why they just don't believe people, because they write out why they do it. They will say, hey, I did it because I don't like Black people. And then they're just like, well, you can say that psychiatric disability played a role, but the reason is on the paper, and it doesn't have anything to do with it.
Mm-hmm. And for folks on, we had a significant mass shooting several years ago within a Black church that a white person went into the church and killed 9 people. So it was very much focused on mental illness in our state. And so there had to be a lot of advocacy around that in education, because it wasn't mental illness, of course. So So another question, how can our organization, so organizations like Able South Carolina and other centers for independent living, how can we do a better job with serving youth with disabilities? What can we all do better to make sure that youth are included?
I would say
Well,
honestly, just meet them where they're at, and if they're not ready to come out and say, "Hey, I have a disability, I'm proud," and just like give them the help and resources and the history behind the movement, because it's not taught in school. The whole, I didn't know about Judy Human until I went to YLF.
Oh,
Okay, so I'm not going to apologize because this is an access need. So can you repeat the question again, please?
absolutely, absolutely. Now let me remember my question because that's the issue. Now, what can centers for independent living do to better include youth with disabilities in their programs, but also services and just overall organization? What can we do?
Yeah. So I'm going to list some stuff that we do that I've been involved in because I think it's really important. And I think a lot of schools may not have implemented something similar to it yet. Something that I think is, so you can't, if you have an event for, disabled youth and like the youth don't want to say that they have a disability, they're not going to come. But if you go into a school and you show up at the self-contained class and you've got your activity and stuff, you got a captive audience. Now, I'm not saying that you should lecture them or anything like that, but try to make it fun. And if you send youth, you're not sending older people to the school, you're sending youth who are proudly disabled and can tell the youth there, like, hey, I am one of you. And a lot of them are, some of them are like, whatever, but some of them are more excited. They're like, when I would go, I was like, oh, me too. What do you do? And I'd be like, oh, I'm in school studying this. And they're like, oh, I want to. And then I get to hear what they kind of are interested in and maybe turn that into like, hey, so I use accommodations to do that. You want to learn about that process, and then now you can talk about how they're going to talk about their accommodations in school when they go to their IEP meetings. And so I really think like getting into the schools can really build that disability pride to get them to the extent that maybe they'll want to come to an event, and you can do the work there too. I just know it's hard to get them there. So schools is a way to disseminate it. And it's also a way to educate youth without disabilities as well, and use both ways. And so you kind of get that like consistent kind of changing what disability means to them from something that's a detriment to something that's part of an identity. So I said the schools, and then just exposure. So exposing them to proud youth with disabilities in the schools. If they come out to an event, have it be run with youth with disabilities. Maybe even like if you could do like a one-on-one peer mentoring thing to spend time with the youth who, even if they aren't talking about disability, consistently demonstrates disability pride. They can ask for accommodations. Maybe something I'm learning, I'm a new wheelchair user, y'all. And like, if I could see someone confidently go through an open door, that would that would mean a lot to me to learn how to be more confident in navigating myself. And I think that, that peer aspect is just really important. It's having someone there to model it. I guess that comes back to the whole point. So school is good setting to get to the youth. The important part is modeling the behavior, not even the behavior, modeling the empowerment and the pride and the capability that and to be disabled, to have that identity, and also living your life the way that you want to, and having them see that it's not a detriment to them, it's just a part of them. And Like it's a part of me.
Absolutely. And Jack, what about what could organizations like Able South Carolina that are across the country, what could we do to better improve to get youth to come to us to be involved in our programs, our services, but also our organization?
Well, actually, I've had this idea for a while. Like, for example, at my job, you have to go through the academy to be able to officially work there. That is one of the main reasons why I'm the only person with a disability working there. So maybe just would like to see more places that, even though you can't do it because you have a certain disability, they would allow you to work there.
Absolutely. So making sure that you're modeling inclusivity too, and diversity. I like that. I'm going to take some questions. Alexis, did you have anything to add to that too? I know you did get some comments.
I would just say, teach them that disability is not a it's not a death sentence. It's something, it's not 100% who you are, but it's like a part of you that you've lived with.
Mhm.
And that's just something like every day to me, it's like another adventure, because I don't know what's going to happen. Like sometimes I freak out because the lights are bright, and then I remember all these different things that I have achieved and all this stuff. I understand that you can make it and stuff.
Absolutely. I think SILS, that's a really key element of what Centers for Independent Living does. They model and, showing that, but that's really great, great information too, is just showing them what it's like to have a disability and being honest, because it's not all peachy all the time. And there's definitely transitions. And as I'm aging, there's disability progression that's occurring that we all have to start talking about, but not yet. But
Kimberly,
that's
before
something.
you,
Yeah.
just before you jump into audience questions, I did have one more.
Absolutely.
So Wednesday's been speaking a lot about finding her disability pride. So to everybody, what helped you find that pride in yourself? We all have a lot of different identities these days. We identify as a race or a gender identity, disabled or non-disabled, age. What helped you find pride in yourself? And what was that moment for you?
When I finally realized that hating myself was actually killing me, and understanding that I'm a big Hobbit person, so I like to quote Gandalf. And it says, some people believe it is great power, that's only great power that can hold evil in check. But that's not it. I have found that it is small, everyday deeds of ordinary folk that keep the darkness at bay, small acts of kindness and love. So I tend to live by that and just do small kindness towards myself and others and spread love. And even though I'm autistic and schizophrenic, it doesn't really define me. I'm Alexis. They said I could never graduate, and there I was on stage graduating, and I dropped my tassel off my cap and ended up accidentally dropping it on stage and running back to go get it. So it was there. You find the small joys, the small victories.
Awesome.
Well, that's a big victory, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And nobody probably even noticed you dropping it besides you. But awesome. When was that, Alexis? Was that recently that you graduated?
Oh, I graduated last year.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, awesome. Jack, how about you? When did you find your disability pride?
Well, actually, I want to add this to what Alexis just said. So one thing, my my dad always says this to me because I like to sit around the house and just do some stuff that I like to do and not go outside and go do stuff. He's like, every single day you're wasting a part of your life and you can't go back to it. So I'm like, okay. And then I'm starting to realize that I got to go do more stuff before my life is over, even though I'm the only person with a disability in my family.
Absolutely. They're not letting that stop you. And that's important because I think a lot of times parents don't always push you to be independent. And so that was really cool of your dad. And Wednesday, did you have anything to add?
No,
Yeah, you talked a little bit about this, and I'm sure this is an ongoing a piece of us is the disability pride, because just because you have disability does not make you have that disability pride automatically. And I know having a disability, I shared my story earlier with having a disability since I was 2 and just kind of struggling with finding that community that was so needed, where skills really are valuable. And I did not have disability pride until probably college, because it took a little while to get where I was, because I did not learn about disability rights in school. And, you know, there's all of the barriers within when you're a youth. So very good.
Hi, this is one of the sign language interpreters. We're going to go ahead and switch.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, great. So we'll go to, I did see a hand raised a second ago, but one of the questions that we had asked earlier is, what is the social media platforms that youth prefer? I know that we talked early in our session about how Facebook is not it for youth. What? No, Jack is shaking his head no. So tell us, what are the social media platforms that we should be looking into to engage youth with disabilities? So Jack, do you want to start, Jack? Because I saw you nodding your head.
For me, I've been chatting with a lot of YLF people on Discord.
So Discord, do you want to explain what that is?
It's like for gamers. But now it's starting to expand for even non-gamers, for people that don't play games.
Very cool.
thought it was like fun Microsoft Teams.
Oh, what fun, like so tell us more about that.
Oh, I said, think about it like fun Microsoft Teams. Like
Okay.
different channels, and then you can like call people and you can pen things so that everyone sees it. And like, so like it's a lot of its functionalities are similar to Microsoft Teams.
And also too, people put rules on there. So like, if let's say somebody does something bad, and I know I'm gonna say this, but I've gotten banned from a couple of Discord servers for not obeying rules. And I'm glad that you could put rules, but on my Discord server, I don't use rules. I'm fine with whatever. But I know on certain servers, they use rules just to be safe. Like if someone be's mean to somebody about their disability or something else, they could let the admin take care of it.
And can you tell us how, I know that Equip has, I think they're on Discord, and so is YLF. Can you tell us how the program is connecting with youth on Discord?
It's well, I know we have the global one and us. So it could either be, and some friends from YLF also have Discords too, and they've been doing like some gaming stuff and also to movies and just chit chatting.
Right. So, and I think it's called Able South Carolina Youth Discord, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. What other platforms are the new thing that we need to know about?
It's not new, but if you want to get youth that are already kind of into activism, Twitter is the space. If a youth has something to say, what they're most likely going to do is get themselves a Twitter, because it's really easy to get not really easy, but it's comparatively easy to get your message out on than it is to say. I would say sometimes TikTok. Actually, I remember I had a TikTok go viral on Twitter. It's got to be careful with it, because the message does get out. You want to be careful about what you're putting out there. But I think a lot of young people who are leaning toward activism use Twitter.
Alexis, what about you?
And
I don't know. I don't really use social media.
Okay.
And
I mean, I am a part of this Facebook group, but that's old.
Yeah, that's old school.
And I actually want to go back to what Wednesday said. Another, I know this one's old, is YouTube.
YouTube. Yeah.
I've seen a lot of Able stuff on YouTube.
Yep. Yeah, we use a little bit of everything to try to meet everybody somewhere. So yeah, very cool. Very cool. And I just learned about Discord, I think like last week. So very cool. I'll have to get on it. And I'm shaking my head no, because
I still have a MySpace.
I do. No, I probably do have an old MySpace.
Or Snapchat, which I don't use.
Oh, a Snapchat? Is that old school now?
Yeah.
I think so, but younger people are apparently still using it, but I definitely dropped it like once I think I dropped it in high school.
Yeah, same thing with Instagram.
See, guys, we're learning something. We're learning something. I thought Snapchat was like the thing, but
yeah,
not. See, this is why we need you guys.
I think it is for like people not in their 20s.
Okay, thanks.
I feel like it's happening is people phase in and out of Snapchat. So right now I've heard that it's popular with like maybe people who are in like their teens, early teens. Like when it started getting popular with us, and I think people just fizzle out of using it.
Awesome. So there is a question on there's a couple questions, and I'm going to start with Jody, I am not going to try to say your last name, but Jody H said, question for Jack. I'm in criminal justice and I'm wondering what you do at the sheriff's office. And it was Selena from the Friedman Center. So can you tell us what you do at the Charleston County Sheriff's Department?
I just do whatever they need me to do. I'm like their general helper. If they need me to shred papers, I'll shred papers. If they need me to vacuum, I'll vacuum. So right now I'm in training and I vacuum and wipe off the whiteboard for what meetings they put down. And I've been in logistics cutting badges.
Oh, cool. Okay, great. And that's something, so you're in training right now too. That was a process to get your foot in the door there. Was that right?
And even before I stepped foot in the office, before she became sheriff, we did ride-alongs together.
Okay, cool.
So I got to experience that a little bit too before.
Awesome. Awesome. And they've had a lot of incidents within people with disabilities. And so I think I think you're going to really be able to change some of their minds as well.
I think I already have. A lot of people are really, a lot of the people that work there are really liking me.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. And then Kay asked, I'm curious with Jack, Alexis, and Wednesday, when was your first visit to a Center for Independent Living and what brought you here? So what was the first visit within our organization, Able South Carolina, and what brought you to us? Did they go with someone else or did you self-initiate it? Getting into the door is important for other IL centers as well. So what got you to us? What brought you to us? And then did you come with somebody or did you initiate it yourself?
I would say it was a bit of a decision with me and my mom, but at the end I was only 15 and my mom's like, you need to learn a little more independence because she has she's disabled herself. She has some health problems and she's like, I'm not going to be here for forever, and you're going to need to learn how to stand up for yourself and how to take care of this and that. So sometimes your parents driving you to places is kind of a good thing.
How about you, Jack?
So for me, I don't know if this is exactly what happened, but my mom saw something on the internet about it. And also we've seen something about Clemson Life where one of my friends are right now. And that's how we heard about it.
Awesome. And Wednesday?
Sorry, I was answering a question in the chat. Could you ask that, please?
Yeah, so this was a question. What was your first visit to a SIL and
Yeah.
what brought you to us?
Oh.
Did you go with somebody else or did you self-initiate?
I went with somebody else. It was after YLF, and I was on the YLF alumni thing. And even though I'm from Columbia, I got in the car with Cameron Fowler, who used to work at Able, South Carolina, drove up to the Greenville office for an event up there. So I was kind of like, I guess I was volunteering. Oh, I was going to I was doing the alumni thing, and then because of that, I went to the quit meeting in Greenville. But I had to get a ride because that was an hour and a half away, and I wasn't driving.
Got it. Very cool. And let me see. This one is done. So Misty asks, what sort of terminology do we need to change within the disability world? So within IL. And I know Wednesday, you mentioned that the word independence is troubling sometimes. And the word interdependence is a better word. What else can we change? What words are we using that just are not connecting with youth or are hurtful towards the disability community?
I'm working hard with an elected official. We're working hard to change from special needs class to something more friendly and more inclusive, or we haven't come up with a name yet. We're still working hard on that. Well, I would say some of the things that need to change is change from special needs, because everyone has needs. It doesn't mean mine are special because I need accommodation, something that I need in order to exceed in class.
And that's not a word that we came up with, that special needs is definitely an issue that the disability community has never approved, and it's not in any of our legislation. So that was something that was developed by teachers and parents, not our community. Yeah. But we see that word all the time, don't we, Alexis?
Yeah, I'm working hard with different people on getting it changed. Well, at least in Richland 1 or something.
Awesome. Jack or Wednesday?
So for me, I was thinking like at my job, for example, maybe, and I know this goes for the same thing at school, give people with disabilities their own separate office. I know like at school, you get your own separate classroom with other kids with disabilities. So maybe for a job, give people with disabilities their own office.
Or maybe like somebody to assist with like accommodations, maybe? Is
Or
that
maybe
something?
like just build an office with accommodations in it that they need. Just say,
Gotcha.
oh, I want this, and they'll put that in there, or I want this, or I need this.
Or are you talking about like a place where people could go to look at different accommodations and pick them?
And then put it in their office for their job.
Oh, yeah. So kind of like a like assisted technology place.
Yeah.
To learn what can, yeah, that's a really good idea because a lot of employers do not know about accommodations. Yeah. Wednesday, what about any other words besides independence that you can think of that we could do a better? I know that on the national level too, there's been some conversations about how confusing the term centers for independent living are because we're often associated with nursing homes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, as far as terms, I guess, I feel like independence makes sense in some contexts, but in some contexts, interdependence makes more sense. So just like that, which we mentioned. And I think we do a good job of talking about our consumers like they are people, like they are the ones driving the service because they are. So I guess some things that are important for IL is remember that it's consumer driven and it's the consumer's goals that they're working on, and you might have, your experience, have some advice maybe to share or from your experience, laying out like the possibilities of the different options that there are, but it's not your job to tell them what to choose. Even if you think it's a bad idea, it was an informed choice, then that was your responsibility was to provide the information. And so I got a bit off topic there, but I think things to keep in mind for things that might need to change is some places I think need to do a little bit less telling of what to do. Make sure that you keep that consumer driven part, and also recognizing that one person's goals may not be another person's goals. Like one person's goal may not be that they want to return to work full time while they're on benefits. You might think that's the best option. You might think they can do the 40 hours a week. You may think that they can, but if they say that they don't want to, then, that's what independence means to them. So that's the goal that I'm going to help them to reach.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there's another question, and this is going to be, there's a couple loaded questions that are going to be fun to answer. One of the questions is, so what do you suggest instead of saying special needs? Wednesday, do you want to take that one first, or?
Well, no, because when I hear just special needs, I'm just like, you mean disabled? So I don't want to veer too close into like making it a euphemism, but to be completely honest, the way that classes are rated in school are already euphemisms. Like, they call honors classes are honors classes, but those are the classes a lot of times college are looking for. College prep classes are not necessarily college prep are general classes. If you're in CP2, college prep 2, I'm going to be honest, I was in CP2 for my math classes and they were not expecting us to go to college. And then so the titles are already euphemisms for what they are, except for honors and AP, and then my school IB. So that's a really hard, because like I was gonna call it something, I would probably just replace special needs with disability, but there's plenty of youth without disabilities like in the general classrooms. I just feel like maybe you should integrate the classrooms, because maybe a separate class isn't needed. Like maybe I can understand like a resource room, or or like maybe if there was like a session set aside for like additional instruction. But I think as much as possible, maybe kids in blank program are in other classes, are in the general ed classrooms, and maybe they're just in the program that's formally known as special ed, to get them the extra resources that they might need. So I guess I wouldn't be replacing special ed classroom, because I don't think I would have, just if I was like waving a magic wand, you'd have integrated classrooms.
Absolutely. Alexis, what about Alexis and Jack? So we already said special needs is just a gross word, but what do we recommend instead?
So what I would recommend, honestly, is like for a high school and a middle school, like they call a regular class a regular ed class. So what would you call a special needs classroom?
Mhm. And I think
I would-
this terminology, yeah.
Isn't that's kind of unfair? I would just say keep it the same. Just do special needs, or just call everything a disability class,
Mhm.
or make a whole school for disability people.
And I think
We should be able to be in like the public schools, because those are the schools that are free, and those are the schools that we're entitled to go to under the law, and they have to serve students with disabilities and give us, the accommodations we need to go to public school, because everyone has a right to go to public school. But I definitely agree with that, like, functionally, I understand, like, before I wave the wand and the magical integrated classrooms appear, there's probably going to be something. Changing the name is a much more immediate step. And so I think maybe based off of what the class is, like, hey, is this the class for people with intellectual disabilities? Then maybe it should be like you could say, but not, see, the thing is, you can say disability, but that means separate things in the school. So like being in the resource room in Gen Ed is special ed, to use the term they use, but also being the self-contained classroom is as well. And there's like different, like, so there's different types of classes. So I'm just trying to think how we name them. Like, you have all the students with autism in one class, all the students with intellectual disabilities in one class. I don't, it gets messy. So maybe
and it's interesting because the question was, what would you say instead of special needs? And it's interesting that you all connected the special needs term with education system, because you guys aren't described as special needs, are you?
Not if that person is my friend.
Alexis, do people call you special needs? Jack?
Well, I didn't answer the first question. I would
Go
say
ahead.
I do think there should be integration and just hire hire some aides in that classroom and pay the teachers more. Like, it should be this hard to find teachers, because teachers aren't being paid as much, and teachers have to find other jobs. Like, I had a teacher that had like 3 other jobs. One was her home business, and the other one was some restaurant.
So Alexis,
And
what I
just
hear
group it all together and just call it diverse learners. Like,
or something, my son is in a class that he gets, it's like a resource class, and they just call it intensive studies or academic seminar. And so that it's not being separated as much. But I think too that we've got to make sure that the word disability is not something that people are scared of. And that's hard because in the school system, it will still be seen as separate because we still have a lot of advocacy to do. But we should not hide away from the word disability. Do you think that?
Yeah, I feel like you could call it like, and this would broaden up who they could serve too, if it's the disability education program. And
Mhm.
then I think it would broaden up who is able to use some of those resources.
Yeah.
as well.
Alexis, chat.
So like, okay, so I'm gonna go back to what Wednesday was saying about the schools. So like, here's an example. Like, let's say I know some people's disabilities are a physical disability where you can see it, and some are hidden. Why don't you just call it something like that if you don't see their disability? Like for me, you can see my disability, and I don't know if like for my brother, you can't see his
Mhm.
because he has dyslexia, and you can't see that.
Yeah, and I think I think that with the word disability is important, but it should, for invisible disabilities too, it's a important word to use too, because it also shows that not everybody has a physical disability that you can see.
Yeah, because like let's say, oh, it's a regular ed kid, and then let's say, oh, somebody says, oh, you have a disability, and they're like, what are you talking about? I don't have one.
Yeah, and a lot of times, and that was a question that was brought up earlier too, and Wednesday hit on it, that she was not told that she had a disability growing up. And so that was a hidden conversation until she got older, and realized that she needed disability student services at the colleges. Was that something, did you all learn that you had a disability earlier on?
I
Well,
learned.
for me, I actually, well, I don't know if I knew, but man, I don't know what age I was, but my mom and dad, they still tell me, and everyone we meet, this story. I was born very, very early and was possibly not going to be able to be alive. And my brain was not working too good. And that's why they had to put this shunt in my head. And that's why I got cerebral palsy.
Mhm.
It's a long story that now, since they've told me, I'm going to remember for a while.
Yeah. What about you, Alexis?
I remember walking to the doctor and my mom was telling, when I did all these tests, and like a few weeks later, my mom told me, oh, you have autism. And then she didn't know what it was. My dad didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was. So I thought, oh, okay, cool. And I went to school and we had all these meetings and stuff. And like, I remember there were like 14 people around the table and I was like failing all my classes. My mom's like, you need to get her these accommodations. And like, it was weird growing up when I was younger.
Yeah. There's a lot of comments in here about just why does there even need to be a name? And I completely agree with you guys, because it should be inclusive education. If schools were doing it right, they would be providing services like accommodations to ensure that everyone is learning. And so there are, a lot of initiatives on the national level. I know in South Carolina as well, is to make sure that there's people in inclusive classrooms, and we call it general ed classrooms, which why do we even have a term for that as well? But providing instruction with accommodations and an assistant in the class, but it's in the general ed class. And that's the way it should be. If people
I
are
was in
needing,
a class.
yep. Well, what was that?
Oh, you mentioned, so I was in a class, I don't think it was quite integrated, but it was in that direction. So when I was in school for a couple of years, one of the self-contained classes in my class, which was like the advanced class, but we're both technically like in the special ed program, and we were in the back of the hallway together. So we only really got to see each other, and sometimes our classes were just one. And a lot of the children in the advanced class also have disabilities. This thing that people don't learn. A lot of them are like neurodivergent and benefited greatly from having the two special ed instructors in the classroom. I think if things got around swimmingly, my grades were better than they normally were because I was able to get the accommodations I needed to take the test. And it seemed like everyone was pretty good at like getting what they need, and everyone got, I think, well, everyone had people they got along with well. Let's be realistic. This is a middle school classroom, but it wasn't necessarily a straight line between who has a disability and who doesn't. I do think there was a line between who you can physically see they have a disability and who doesn't. And I don't mean like they're using mobility aid, but like maybe in movement, like I was in that group. But it was a really good experience. And so I am a big advocate of integrating classrooms, even though I don't know if that counts as an integrated classroom, but I feel like it has similar vibes.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, there's efforts, but do all schools believe this? No. And so something that we see within our youth too is that sometimes that there has not been enough movement within the school, that there are segregated services happening. And that's kind of the expectations for society. And that's where I think SILs can really play a role as well. Alexis, the issue with there was a conversation in the question and answers about what about self-contained classes, and I think they have done away with that term, but still people are using it because that's what they know. But the damage behind being segregated, I think is significant. I think we still see that within some of our youth programs as well, because they were accommodated in a separate classroom, but not necessarily in society. And so that's where we've got a lot of work to do with truly integrating everyone in the community.
All right, so I'm gonna go back to what Wednesday was saying about the classrooms. I would honestly have to say, if you people are gonna call the classrooms special ed classrooms, self-contained classrooms, stuff like that, and for normal people, regular ed classrooms, normal classrooms, just call them classrooms. Make it fair for all. Make it fair for all. Make it fair.
So my school disguised it with college names. So everyone had a college that their hall was, that their team was, and you went to all the teachers in that team. Except for my group, we were called the Erskine group, which is like the least known college, and it was just us who was in the special ed hallway. So they tried, and well, I mean, we won all the ARPs parties. We were great, but so sometimes there are ways to categorize students who are going to be moving in the same work circles without having to do that.
Yeah, just because we're no longer in the basement doesn't mean there's still some structural things that keeps us
right. So like the teams again, like the Erskine team, and everyone.
Yeah, same for colleges too.
And
same for anything, honestly.
And that's the new, we always say within our organization that segregated classrooms are the new institutionalization. That's like the new form of institutionalization because of the long-term damage that it causes. And so that's something like calling it classroom, Jack. Absolutely. It should just be called class. And same with honors. Like, I don't care if somebody is in honors, like, either. So it's, it should just be a class across the board. So I definitely agree with you. I think sometimes just our how we are growing up and experiencing the world with a disability really, it really, we can reflect later on to see how wrong we may have been treated or we've experienced things. So I really, really appreciate that, Jack, because I just saw you do that too.
I think it's also important to have diverse teachers, like maybe have some teachers that are disabled and teachers that are not what the normal thing is.
And what is normal, guys? What is normal? And there is no normal. And so I think that's something we've got to remember as well. There's been a lot of comments, just kind of what other examples. Now, I love Kay's question. So Kay asks a question, how do we break the barriers of disability classification? It is a serious problem because you see inequity. And I completely agree with that. So Jack and Alexis, like, and Wednesday, like, how do we break down the different, I call it disability hierarchy too, of just the different classes of people with physical disabilities, people with intellectual disabilities, people with developmental disabilities, but really we're one community. So how do we break down the classification?
Gotta break down your internal biases. And maybe spend time with people with different disabilities than you and get to know them. And now sometimes that can be painful. Like I remember when I was at YLF, I think this is my first year at YLF. And one of the, I'm not gonna give names, I'll give the situation. One of the, we were going to the State House that year, and then one of the participants wasn't able to get on to the bus because I think the ramp was busted or something like that. And so we were just out there waiting. And I was like, well, I'm not going to get on the bus without you, so we'll chill out here and wait. While we were talking, and it came up like that this person didn't think people who needed accommodations to learn in school shouldn't be in school. And I was like, well, I use accommodations that help me learn in school. I don't think it's an unfair advantage. You know, even it's the playing ground. And this person did use accommodations, but didn't see like accommodation of say a ramp or a note taker would be the same as an accommodation to get more time on tests because you think slower rather than you write slower, or stuff like that. I kind of forgot where I was going with that, but like I really do think, and I think through getting to know each other, some of that has broken down. So I do think spending time in cross disability spaces, but unfortunately it does hurt feelings. And so I do feel like things should be instructed first to avoid having so much of that happen, because people don't have to be gracious when like you call them stupid.
Yeah. So maybe setting the tone of the commonalities between all disabilities, the cross disability piece.
Yeah, like being taught like about different like we do like YLF or something, and be taught about like different cultures within disability, because they all have different things into like maybe so like learning in a formal setting, kind of like something learning to ask people if you don't know. And I do think some incidents are bound to happen because people have biases, and I had biases that I had to unlearn. It took me a while to be like, wow, I need a mobility aid to use one. So, but it wasn't as hard for me as other people because I was surrounded by people who use mobility aids. So, yeah.
And that happens even with our consumer base too. And so having people understand, just because you have a disability, you don't understand other people's disabilities a lot of times. And so it's really important to understand the entire community and the shared barriers that we all face. I know just yesterday, our lead independent living specialist, or our director of IL now, she just got promoted, LaQuanda Clark, one of her consumers who has a psychiatric disability, saw that she did not have any hands and said, oh, I'm so sorry you don't have hands. And so it happens, other people in the disability community are feeling sorry for or having pity with other individuals with disabilities too. And so it's really interesting. Alexis, Jack, how can we break down the classification of disability? What are your thoughts?
Can you rephrase it or describe what that means?
Yep, absolutely. So how can we break down the different levels of disability? So disability classification can be like being compared to people with psychiatric disabilities, being compared to people with physical disabilities, and how there's different classifications that people just don't always understand, but they don't see us as a community together. So there's a lot. Okay, go ahead.
I think where you want to have to break that human nature of always comparing one thing to another and seeing mostly what is different than what is the same. And also there's always going to be a hierarchy because people are going to say, oh, well, I don't have that many problems, so I'm above you. Or, oh, you act a certain way, or, oh, you stem differently than what my son does, so you obviously don't have the same thing or suffer the same way. So I think the first thing we should do is try to change what the loudest speaker is saying. Like, try to talk in a way that is inclusive and that brings more people together than separate. Because then you see only, oh, well, this is only classified as disability, not this. This is just weird. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think I do. And then I think something that Wednesday said too is kind of starting off with just explaining how all people with disabilities have this shared rights, shared struggles, shared, barriers in the society, lack of accommodations, disrespect of rights, and helping connect that. When I'm presenting, I always connect with other disabilities, which are really important. While it may look different, we still have significant barriers.
Oh, language. I've typed something in a chat, but I will, and not in chat, in the question and answer, but I want to say it out loud. Something that to get rid of hierarchy, sometimes you gotta, like, with the words that you use to refer to other people or refer to yourself, you want to be careful about that. Like words like high functioning and low functioning, or like, they are words used to describe people, but they're really limiting. And I don't think it tells you very much about the person. And I think sometimes it can create hierarchy itself with people who get like specific labels. And so making sure that we're not, even if it's the term that the doctor used, not necessarily using that term to describe them, because that's not the take that we have from the disability community perspective. At least I would hope not. We wouldn't consider someone as low functioning. We would consider what their needs were and be aware of what accommodations they may need from listening to them or people who they choose to advocate for them. But yeah, avoiding like terminology towards other groups while we're working together, or towards in our own group. Like I've seen it happen with different people with CP, and like who had more mobility, and it's just like, well, that's not, and that the hierarchy needs to go. And so like it's in individual conversations, and it's also in like language we use to describe that. Any language that hints that a disability is better or worse probably doesn't need to be used.
Jack, did you have anything to add to that too? That's just the overall, how would we break down that kind of ranking classification of disability?
Maybe one thing I would say is just people like me with cerebral palsy don't I'll just put it this way. Let's say people with cerebral palsy hang out with people with cerebral palsy. Don't do it that way.
Right.
I would just say everyone hangs out with everyone, even if you don't have a disability.
Right.
Because I've noticed things like that. Even at YLF, people with disabilities hang out with other people with disabilities and mostly no non.
Yeah, and I think that happens a lot within schools, and I think that unfortunately happens within the community, and that's something that I think IL is forever going towards with changing and needing to change because it's not just about physical disabilities, and that's something that we've got to really look at and address. So I know when I went to YLF this year, I think part of it is that a lot of times people aren't around other people with different disabilities. And so they may be segregated in classroom, but they were just, the youth were so fascinated that I had one leg and came up to me and asked me, oh goodness, asked me if I was good at a sport. And I forgot what the sport was, but it was really something that you have to have a leg in, and hopscotch. If I was good at hopscotch, and I was like, oh gosh, I'd break my hip if I did that. But they were, but it was they, people don't always have the experience of being around people with all different disabilities. And so I think it is important for SILs to have events, but also making sure that we're educating as much as possible as well.
Yeah, and going back to when you were talking about the hopscotch, like they probably did some accommodations to make it so people with disabilities, like things that normal people could do, they could make it so people with disabilities could play along and do it with them too.
There's some accommodations and making it more universally designed. Yeah. And I see a hand raise. Jenny, can you help unmute the microphone? And it's a 703 number.
Just ask them to, oh, there you go. Go ahead.
Hello.
Hey,
Hello.
Hello, do you have a question?
Yes. Actually, it's not so much of a question. It is to say how happy and proud I am of the youth and the discussion that you've been having. And so my name is Doris. I'm a blind woman. I have worked both inside and out of the independent living movement, but I went to I've been blind since birth, and I went to segregated schools because we were forced to when I started school in first grade. But by the time I got to sixth grade, we moved into Montgomery County, Maryland schools. And the idea that you put forth of a resource center, a resource room or office, and resource teachers, we had that there before there was ever an Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And so what I want to say as a lifelong person with a disability, when I first heard the term special needs, it really irked me the wrong way because we were right in the middle of the disability rights movement. And really, special needs, that's not, I considered myself a student with a disability who needed access. And that's the way I think of it to this day. So I'm so intrigued and proud of the discussion that I'm hearing here with regard to independent and independent living versus interdependence. Interdependence has always been the concept in the independent living movement, but I think I want to say to you that the term Center for Independent Living was coined because by people who started CILs, was coined because when you went to vocational rehabilitation services to get some financial assistance for the education that you might need to then go into the workforce and get competitive jobs with your able-bodied peers. Many of the people with significant disabilities, like Ed Roberts, this story came partly from Ed Roberts, were told, but you can't live independently. And until you have the ability to live independently, we're not going to allow you to come into regular classes, and we're not going to allow you to go to the university because you have no vocational potential if you can't live independently. So think of it this way. It was a play on words to a defiance. So thank you for letting me say that, and I appreciate so much having heard this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think too,
Kimberly, I do have a question.
Yeah,
for
go
our
ahead.
group. Finish your thought though. Oh, no.
Yeah, I was just going to say, with working with youth and just, my experience of being a 40-something-year-old woman with a disability, there has been some change, but not as much as we would hope after some of these major pieces of disability legislation passed. I think sometimes things have made improvements, but then there's other steps that make us go backwards that are being led by non-disabled people. And so it's just, it also shows that there's so much left to do. It's our approach that has to be different within today's society. So go ahead, Erin.
So I know we're coming up towards the end, but I wanted to ask a video game related question because I think our panelists are in tune with that idea. So let's say you're all given 1,000 XP to spend however you want. What's one skill would you put those XP into, and why? To become a better leader, what one skill would you put those 1,000 XP into to be a better leader?
I like to think I'm pretty well-rounded. Do I have to put it all towards one thing?
For this, yes. And I'm gonna also add a caveat. None of you can say the same thing, so you all have to pick something different.
All right, so I think I'm pretty solid.
Just to make it challenging.
So I think strength, endurance, probably not all, actually. I guess endurance would be how long I can do something. Advocate. I don't know, I'm tied. I could dump the points into charisma, which would get me more of a following. But if I had endurance, I could do more myself. I'm gonna go with charisma because then I can delegate tasks and do what I can.
Wow, and I already thought you were very charismatic. Excellent choice. All right, Alexis or Jack, what skill would you put your XP into?
What was that? What skill was that? Mine would have to be.
Wednesday said charisma, so.
Oh, resilience. Resilience, because I have a hard time getting back up when I fall down. So when I fall down, I tend to get mad and wanting to stop or quit or attack things aggressively. So I guess resilience.
Excellent choice.
To be like Bilbo.
All right, Jack, what about you?
For me, I would probably say advocating, just doing stuff on my
Advocating.
own.
Using that voice.
Is that like a speech stat?
And I think it's important to note, I don't think there's a wrong answer to that. It's, you know, everybody kind of feels like they have to prioritize things a little different. So it's kind of just cool to hear that from each of you. But I think in reality, we'd all try to spread that out. Like Wednesday said, you know, well-rounded.
Here's some examples. Like, I know our parents want us to do stuff on our own, and sometimes they like to help us. And sometimes I'll say, hey, I could do this on our own. Like, you push them away and say, hey, I could do this on my own.
All right. And to wrap up my questions, I'm just going to say, where would you tell people to go so they can gain their own XP?
Their local center for independent living. or self-advocacy group like Self Advocates Becoming Empowered or People First. I think those are all good places to up your XP.
Wow, I was going to say either the library and teach yourself and build your own self up, but I agree with Wednesday.
I'd just say I feel so much younger now that somebody else said the library and not the internet. So that's awesome. Thank you just for making me feel younger again.
Any
So
other? Oh, go ahead, Jack.
for me, I would say come to YLF or Equip, or come to somebody's house and hang out with somebody with a disability.
Oh, awesome. Do we have any other additional questions before we wrap up? You guys have been amazing, and so has the audience. You guys have had great questions. And of course, the panel has been able to rock and roll with their answers. So any closing remarks for everyone? And I can start with my closing remarks, and but I'm just so I'm so excited for the future of independent living. I think that we still have a lot of issues and barriers that we have to work together to be a powerful movement. But I think that just the next generation is also gearing up to help us knock those barriers down. So I really appreciate all of our staff that have been so active with running the youth programs, but also all of the youth that have been coming in and changing the world behind them. So very cool. Erin, any comments from you? And then we can go to the panel. Any closing remarks? Erin, was that you? Or are you thinking?
I just unmuted. Oh, I mean, I think it's so incredible. You know, Kimberly, after chatting with you and obviously having gone through the a youth movement experience myself. I think one, it's incredible to see the similarities from the youth movement that I grew up through, but also how much it has changed in a good way. The deepness of the conversations that people are having right now. I remember just having conversations as to whether or not we should be referring to ourselves as youth, because the stigma of the word youth typically meant lack of respect and ageist things. But it's so great to see that that conversation has brought into a much bigger picture of independence versus independence. And I think it's just incredible to see that thoughtfulness continuing.
Alexis?
No, I have none. I can't think of any.
Jack, do you have any closing remarks? Wednesday?
Thank you all for coming to this session today. I really appreciate that y'all took the time out to come and listen to us youth talk about our experiences and what we think. I think it's a great first step. It's to listen to youth to begin how you're going to start looking at your youth programs. And I hope that you'll bring youth on board to work with you on those youth programs. And I look forward to seeing the effects of it in the future through, you know, the IL internet space.
Well, thanks so much, everyone. Jenny, do you want to close us out?
I will go really quickly. Make sure you fill out the survey. And we'll see you all tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern time for our final session of the Institute already. Thank you all for the panel and have a lovely evening, everyone. Bye.